We wanted to add a little to the video we posted yesterday and a little information about what we feel is a paradigm in the mud flood, millennial reign, and Tartaria issue that may not be getting addressed. Yesterday we talked about the CIA being involved in possibly covering up the mud flood, Tartaria, and the millennial reign of Christ, and the issue that we run into where the CIA did not exist at that time. There was a book written, which we show in this video you're going to watch, where the doctor writes quite a bit about world cataclysms that took place and possible resets. The odd thing is that this is a book written about this information that should be publicly known without any problems. And the CIA captures this book. They take the information of the 200 and some pages, and then they redact it. And the only part they release is some 50 pages of the information, which we may find a cover-up when a doctor does some research about past historical events. And the CIA, for some reason, feels it is too sensitive a topic to release. Now, the information we're talking about with this mud flood, the cover-up, the mystery behind it all, for the information we have been covering is that these very old people who lived during the times of the 1800s, who were in their late 90s when they're interviewed on camera, such as we show in this video, they have no recollection, no information about a cataclysm that took place that caused the buildings to be buried. Within this, it is not something that people would fail to mention when talking about the story of their life, because a giant mud flood that floods buildings up to 2 stories high, covering up the first 2 stories, would have buried crops. So there would be no food to eat hardly. It would be very scarce because the buildings that got buried would also cut off the source of food because of the burying of crops and 20 feet of mud. Also, when you have liquefaction of mud that buries buildings up to 2 stories high, the odd factor is that mud's very soft, and it would be like walking in quicksand. So people trapped in their homes would not be able to leave and walk out of these places until that mud dried out. Now, how long would that take? We know in the wintertime, when it rains quite a bit, it can take 2 weeks or more for the ground to start drying. How long would it take for a mud flood event to dry out so that someone could begin walking on it? It's possible it could create a jelly-like factor where it could hold the weight of humans, but you wouldn't be able to bring in wagons for sure. Horses couldn't be able to walk on it very well. So it's an oddity where no one who lived during that time mentions this. 1800s, 1850s, 1870s. They don't mention this cataclysmic event. The buildings then could be much older. That's true. But could the buildings be 1700s, 1500s? We get into a paradigm with this because there's no mention of it in any of the writings from the 1700s about these buildings being buried or the rebuilding of America. Someone during that time would have had to hidden all of this information, and it seems like it's not something that would be hidden during that time in the political realms, because people were doing commerce, and people would have wrote about how it destroyed certain, ports or certain areas of delivery or the railroads. But there's no mention of this. This is where we get into almost a Mandela effect, almost a supernatural type of event where it's possible that it wasn't covered up. It was simply erased from the minds as if a reset took place, and it was just something that people couldn't even remember from an earlier time. Even that doesn't fully make sense. we really do run into a paradigm of thought. As you watch this video, contemplate this and give us your thoughts in the comments, because it is an oddity that becomes mind-blowing, almost paranormal or supernatural, as to why this mystery of it all, the mud flood, the millennial reign, all of this has disappeared from the minds of even the people who existed at a time when it should have occurred. Just some questions, maybe you can answer them. Hey, welcome back, guys. This is Dan from the Sons of Light, and today we're going to be talking about the mud flood, a post-millennial reign occurrence. No historic record that we can find. In fact, people living during the 1800s, you can watch on interviews, people that lived through the Civil War era and talk about their lives, make no mention to a mud flood. And the issue we run into is the buildings supposedly built in 1875 and 1895 and so on are flooded up to at least 1 to 2 stories of mud burying the basements. What is going on here?
About 65 years ago, I came across the ocean from England to the United States, the family settling in Philadelphia. I there attended the public schools and the Boys Central High School eventually, but there was an interval between my attendance of one of the schools. It was not a direct succession. I was forced out of school at 11 to stay out 2 years because the entrance age of the Boys Central High School was 13 and I was only 11. So the problem was what to do with me during the 2 extra years. Well, some of the advisors said, keep him away from books and let him develop physically. I said, if you do that, you might as well kill me now, because I've got to have my books. So they modified the decision into saying, well, you can have them, all right. So I got hold of a book which was called The Magician's Own Book, a book telling of puzzles and tricks and all kinds of little things, chemistry experiments, electrical experiments. The electrical chapter was what struck me at once. And they told how to make an electrical machine out of a wine bottle. And I immediately set to work and made just such a machine and started it in operation. And I got my first view of electric sparks from that machine, my first knowledge of electricity from that machine. And I made a whole lot of apparatus which is recommended to be made, like Leyden jars and little things of attraction and repulsion, dancing figures and so on, and I had that whole equipment, along with a stool which was made by bottles and the board for making an insulated stool in order to insulate a person that wanted to be charged. And we charged them. With an arrangement of this kind, my father rather poo-pooed the magnitude of my efforts, and I thought I had to get even with him somehow, so I made a battery of 5 jars and put them into operation and asked him to take the shock. I never heard after he took that shock any more derogatory remarks about my apparatus.
The question is here today, did the CIA or some government institution hide the mud flood? We're going to examine a few of these questions and delve into some speculation and try to put some common sense to all that's going on. We live in this time right now, and it's extremely important that we figure out this Satan's short season time period, how to prosper and how to fight against the extreme amount of evil that these people who took over after the mud flood have been keeping us subject to and have ever grown in power and subjugation to the average person like you and me, who is being suppressed in our knowledge, in our ability to achieve, and all of the aspects of life that we should be allowed to prosper in. Like Jesus said, there is a control mechanism trying to stop us. So let's move on, and like I said, I'm going to tell you at the end of this presentation how you can join the Sons of Light and enlighten yourself, prosper yourself, and fight against this evil force. So we're taking a look today. There are documents we know that the Central Intelligence Agency, anyway, uses mind control and propaganda on people to suppress information. They've done it to foreign countries for many years. And it is possible, as we have seen from the news, that it's being done on us. The problem is, this organization did not exist in the 1800s or the 1700s. We do know that the British Empire was extremely powerful at suppressing information if they needed to, but it still does not seem feasible during this time with the historical narrative, if it is true, for a cataclysm to take place and there still be no record. So we're going to look at some images of modern day mud flooding. And this usually typically is taking place along either river places, along mountains. So someone lives close to a valley or someone lives close to an ocean. But inland areas, it's very strange to visualize or see that a mud flood would take place. So of course you have mountain areas where you have torrential rains for a long time. The surface level of the mountain starts to give way, possibly even some seismic event, and rushing down the mountain is just gigantic wall of water, wiping out bridges, sweeping homes away. But the issue with looking at this, because I've seen it presented several times, looking at this, it destroys everything in its path. Trees are buried and swept up. It wipes homes away as if they were just sticks. It doesn't matter what it is. And these structures we see that are buried up to the first or second floor underground, we see that they're still standing and they're not shifted or leaning. So for a mass event to take place, such as a mud flood from a mountain area sweeping down, that doesn't seem feasible for what we're looking at, because these buildings, they're still intact and they're flooded with mud as if it just slowly oozed up and buried it. So the secondary factor we're looking at is a seismic event that slowly shakes at a certain vibrational cycle, much like Tesla talked about. Tesla talked about having a weapon, a resonance weapon, where he could use this weapon and match the frequency of a bridge or a building. And that frequency would begin a slow vibration that would start to become so violent that it would shake the building apart. He even talked about doing an experiment with this where he noticed he had to cut it off because the building would have collapsed. We have seen this happen with bridges before, where the wind blew at a certain rate of speed, caused a frequency vibration because of the tonality of the wires vibrating in the wind, and it created a resonance, and the bridge starts wobbling, and collapses. We know Hey guys, we want you to understand that at the Sons of Light, we never try to sell you anything. We believe it's our job to share the gospel of Jesus Christ and to train fellow Christians to prosper and be in good health as their soul prospers. We believe that if you support us, we should provide you with information that accelerates the fulfilling whatever need or answer you're looking for in life. If you're stuck at a certain position in life, or you lack knowledge about a certain subject, getting the answers and saving valuable lifetime is important, be it about health, relationships, wealth, finance, politics, emotions, or other conservative Christian issues. When you join us, we believe it's our duty to provide you with 10 times more value and life-enhancing information, where you can reap bountiful harvest from the years of research contained in the lessons we provide you. We're not interested in selling you anything or asking for donations. We believe in seed time and harvest. Your support is a small seed, and then in return, you reap a bountiful harvest. We are about saving you time on your quest to answer questions and solve problems on this journey we call life. Please check out the invaluable courses we have available in the description section below. If you want the best value in life-enhancing lessons, join the Master's Inner Circle, where you can grow and prosper in knowledge. Thank you. This is Dan Collier for the Sons of Light. This is possible. One of the areas I'm looking at that seems the most feasible for a mud flood, it doesn't answer the question of how history was suppressed, but the Pangea theory. We've heard this for a long time, about one supercontinent existing, which explains how many peoples could have the same buildings, the same people crossing easily over short distances of water or land bridges, or the continents even being connected. It would make a lot of sense why you would have the same architecture instead of a time period when you have thousands of miles of ocean separating continents and the same exact buildings existing there. I believe a Pangea type of Earth would match the theory much better. So imagine if you had a event, and I'm not saying it wasn't a weapon, because we know, as we read one of the verses in the ancient writings, it talks about, and the angel put forth his sword or his rod or his staff into the waters, and it froze a ring. It froze a large area. And we think that's one of the explanations for like the Antarctic area was whatever this staff was. I'm sure it was some technological device, but the angel put forth this rod in the water and froze the waters. So we could be looking at a type of weapon, the types of things like we read from the Indian histories, the Vedas, where it talks about they have these gods and these rulers had flying craft, and they had the ability to destroy entire cities with the weapons they had on. And these are not, I don't believe any of the Greek mythology is totally mythology. I think there's a lot of facts in it, along with these Indian Veda writings, their histories, that at some point in time there were beings, there were entities or people who had these advanced weapons, just like they built these advanced buildings, and they wiped out entire cities, possibly even creating deserts where the entire place is turned to glass. So, putting that aside, we're going to look at the idea that the continents were all closer together. Maybe not totally connected, some of them, but close together. Some event took place, some event not written about. This vibration takes place, and this low-level Tesla-like vibration creates a resonance that begins separating the continents. And within this, and I believe this is a good theory, the continents then were at a higher level. Let's say this is the amount of ocean and it's here. This vibration begins to sink the land. So now you have your land you're living on here and the buildings, it begins to separate and sink lower. This would explain the disappearance of Atlantis going underwater, the disappearance of other land continents written about in history where they just disappeared and sunk down. And also these cities we find, these megalithic type of cities, such as off the coast of Florida and off of Japan, off of the coast of Greece and stuff, where the megalithic structures that were once above ground are now 40, 200 feet, whatever, below the ocean's surface. So, as these continents start to separate, this vibration, perhaps a weapon, starts to create a resonance that separates the continents, begins to sink them, but it's not so severe that it's shaking buildings apart. It's the resonance of Earth. And as it begins to vibrate and the continents sink, the higher levels of dirt or parts of mountains, the higher levels begin to liquefy. But we know, as we read in the Bible, there's nothing new under the sun. If in existence we had people coming out of this great cataclysm that was manufactured, perhaps a weapon, they would know how to mind control and subvert a population as well. So you can take a look at this document that exists so that you will know that these sorts of things take place. I cannot prove that this has happened, but we do know the Smithsonian Institute was created in its day to go around America, find people and find giant bones left over from these gigantic humans they were finding across America. We know it's true because Abraham Lincoln even wrote about the knowledge of the giants at that time. And the Smithsonian would go around, collect all the bones, supposedly telling everyone it was to be on display, and they took them and hid them. And eventually I think they disposed of them in secret. That's a whole nother story, but just to get along the idea that things have been hidden for a purpose. If they're hiding the giant bones, they're definitely hiding the mud flood. Because if it occurred any time between the 1700s, let's say the late 1600s, I can see things still in that era staying hidden somewhat, because people were all about grabbing land and doing adventure, and they still might have it on their mind that this is all new stuff they're discovering. And if they found old villages or old evacuated buildings, you think they would have wrote about it. But that time, kings and queens and people could confiscate and hold that knowledge. Perhaps the library in Alexandria held this, and perhaps the Vatican has much in the vaults about things like this. They were quite persuasive at a time period in gathering information and controlling knowledge. So we are left with a mystery about this. Mysteries often lead us to the idea and knowledge that someone is hiding something, especially with the buildings. I don't think the controllers thought we would figure this out. And they haven't figured out how to respond to it. Perhaps they don't care because they have something greater planned for this time, and they don't care if you find out now. Or perhaps they got caught off guard and didn't think we would figure it out. So we're looking at this mud flood, post-millennial reign of Christ. I believe it was a weapon. If a weapon followed by a cover-up, a mass cover-up by the survivors, the worshippers of the Dark One, and they took control of certain aspects of society. And that's how we got the pilgrims and different people, because they didn't destroy the Bible. They tried to destroy the knowledge and the writings. It didn't work. Somehow by a miracle it got out. And then, I think it was the Gutenberg press. But people fled to America to start a new promised land. And later, as that was growing, I think this force, before knowledge could get to the whole world, this secret occult force, or whatever it might be, came in as a suppressive agent. Perhaps these odd fellows, perhaps some other secret society. Part of a mechanism of Satan's deception that he because the Bible says he'll be released for a short time to deceive the nations again. That doesn't mean he can deceive Christians. He can, because even the Bible talked about during the time before the millennial reign that Satan, the Antichrist, would deceive even the elect if it was possible, which means the elect are the Christians. Christians can be deceived. There are many who are deceived right now about the situation of the millennial reign, and they are very adamant, even militant, about protecting that notion. And I believe what's really going on is this is an implementation by the dark forces into the seminary schools to push a narrative as Satan tries to recreate the post-millennial reign control through Nero and Rome at the time. And he failed when Christ raised from the dead, and then came back and arrested him and put him in prison. And now that he's released, he's put this narrative into the church, so the church stands down waiting for Jesus to come in the clouds and take him away, as Satan recreates his control mechanisms, basically pulling out his playbook, recreating his control mechanisms, starting the same wars, using the same control, the same mental tactics. And he's gotten the church to fall for the idea that this is all new, that it's something that has to happen before Jesus comes back. So our only job is to sit around and watch, be a watcher, because it's supposed to happen. I'm released from all duties as a Christian from doing spiritual warfare. So that's what I think this message through the Scofield Bible, that it was introduced by this satanic force calling itself a religion that has interjected itself in every walk of American and world life, and has even gotten the Christian church to believe it's a POW. And I think that's who interjected all of this to try to bring back their Messiah. So this is where we're at today as a quick talk. Hey guys, we want you to understand that at the Sons of Light, we never try to sell you anything. We believe it's our job to share the gospel of Jesus Christ and to train fellow Christians to prosper and be in good health as their soul prospers. We believe that if you support us, we should provide you with information that accelerates the fulfilling whatever need or answer you're looking for in life. If you're stuck at a certain position in life, or you lack knowledge about a certain subject, getting the answers and saving valuable lifetime is important, be it about health, relationships, wealth, finance, politics, emotions, or other conservative Christian issues. When you join us, we believe it's our duty to provide you with 10 times more value and life-enhancing information, where you can reap bountiful harvest from the years of research contained in the lessons we provide you. We're not interested in selling you anything or asking for donations. We believe in seed time and harvest. Your support is a small seed, and then in return, you reap a bountiful harvest. We are about saving you time on your quest to answer questions and solve problems on this journey we call life. Please check out the invaluable courses we have available in the description section below. If you want the best value in life-enhancing lessons, Join the Master's Inner Circle, where you can grow and prosper in knowledge.